middle of the maamar vkibel Yehudim, and we're holding Ois Gimel, I believe, right? Yeah, we're on page 191. Let's just make a kitzer here to recap. The Frierdiker Rebbe, who said this maamar in Moscow in 1927, under the duress of the KGB, notwithstanding he said the maamar. And the question that he asks is the pasuk says vkibel Yehudim asher chelu lasis. During the time of Purim, we reaccepted what we began accepting at the time of Matan Torah. And the Rebbe's question is a very simple question. How could you say that? What does it mean? At the time of Matan Torah, we left Mitzrayim and we saw miracles there. And we had Kriyas Yamsuf and we saw miracles there. And finally we had Matan Torah. So you had three big events that were so miraculous and so wondrous. And nevertheless, it was only Heichelu, Lasos. It was only a beginning. And now you're saying, and Purim, when it's the Zman of Golus, and even after, the Gemara says, Akati Avdid Achashverosh Hanan, we are still slaves of Achashverosh, etc., etc. How could you say that now, during Purim, their acceptance, their reacceptance, their reaffirmation was the ultimate thing, and that's why they had Geula. That was the Rebbe's basic question in the maamar so far. Now let's go to Gimel. The idea is my nation are all righteous. It's a plantation of what I planted, a branch of my plantation, an act of my hands that I boast with, I'm proud of. The Chol Yisrael, every single Yid, mitzat sheidish nishmotzam, if you look at them from the perspective of their neshama, heim b'madregas tzaddik. They're not just a good Jew. They're having what we call a tzaddik. They're a level of tzaddik. And this is what, when the pasuk says, my nation are all righteous, we don't mean they're all just good guys. We mean there's a level of tzaddik that's true for every single Yid. The Amech Shehem Am Havaya. And the Frierdiker Rebbe explains very beautifully here. V'amech and your nation. V'amech. The nation. Amech, he says, is Am Hashem. Amech refers to the nation of God. Asher Heirosom Vilidosom B'Kedusha. Whose birth and their childhood, the way they were raised, from youth is B'Kedusha V'Tara, with holiness and purity, Ha'amura B'Torah. So therefore, since they had such an education, they're pure. Hey b'madregas tzadikim, and that's why we say they're in a level of tzaddik, because they had this upbringing. Ulechura, seemingly, madregas tzaddik or madregal yoina. The Frierdiker Rebbe asks, okay, it's a nice explanation on the words va'amech kulam tzadikim, but it needs to be understood. Tzaddik is madregel yoina. It's such a high level. You're telling me any Jew that's raised in a kosher way and with a good chinuch is a tzaddik? That's his question. How is it possible for every single Yid to reach this level of tzaddik in actuality? To the point that he will become, or she will become, they will become my plantation, something that I'm proud of and I show off. By having children, and grandchildren. In other words, you know when a child is young already, what they're going to be when they're older. You know the way the grandchildren are going to be to make such a statement. Specifically, when we're at a time of Golus. Haman rose up against them. Lahashmid Vladik, to destroy and kill. Rahman Litzlan. Next page, 192. God forbid, v'oz dafke, and specifically when Haman rose, oz dafke amdu mesiras nefesh kazeh, the Yidden stood with steadfast mesiras nefesh of this degree, bezeh shehilu kihilas berabim, by gathering congregations in public, lilmol Torah, to learn Torah, mesiras nefesh kazeh, with such mesiras nefesh. Kimavur b'medrash Rabbah, it says over there in Medrash Rabbah, that what? Shekibetz Mordechai Yehudi, that Mordechai gathered 22,000 students. Asher, Bevoy Aleim, Tzar HaTzoyder Haman, so that when the enemy of all enemies, the terror, Haman the terror, Harasha, Leipochdu Klal, they did not fear at all. V'yomru, and they said, Bein L'chaim, whether we live, Bein L'movas, whether we die, Kshurim Haim B'Torah, they are connected and bound to Torah. V'hainu shekiblu aleim kol oineshiyah. They were willing to accept upon themselves any and all punishment. Ach v'rak, as long as shaleli pared ma'Torah, not to be separated from Torah b'mesiras nefesh with self-sacrifice by poel mamish. So they paid their dues. The lechura yipali adover. Seemingly, this is wondrous. Very wondrous. Begolus hamar kazerach monazlan, in such a bitter golus of time of Haman. Asher melech gidel v'nosas Haman, that the king himself raises and highlights Haman Harosha, traitors I call Yehudim, the terror of all Jews. And the king himself says, "Here's a pedestal. I put you on a pedestal." Wow. And the Ozdavke, specifically at that very time. The Yidden came with this Mesiras Nefesh that we just described from the Medrash. So the Rebbe's question is, how did this happen? How was this possible? The idea is, it says in Medrash, Ish Yehudi. Ish Yehudi, it's from Pasuk in the Megillah. Shahoyim Mordechai Shokul, which means Mordechai was equivalent B'Doirei in his generation, Moshe B'Doirei, like Moshe in his generation. Ma Moshe Omad Ba'Peretz. Just as Moshe stood up when there was a breach, and he got out, and he did what he had to, and he wasn't fathomed by the enemy, of Mordechai, so to Mordechai emulated this aspect of Moshe, and that's why Moshe, talking about Moshe, that's why we call Mordechai Ish Yehudi. And the Gemara continues. Ma Moshe. Yeah.
It's interesting that Moshe in the Torah is called Ish Moshe, and here in Megillah, Mordechai is called Ish Yehudi.
Right.
Both have the titles.
So Shmuel, I think the Rebbe in a way is like addressing what you're saying, without saying that he's called Ish Moshe. He's saying that there's a commonality between them, as he will say. I mean, and again, I don't know if he's answering that question directly, but I think based on this, we can understand what you're saying. Ma Moshe, limet Torah li Yisrael, just as Moshe taught Torah to Yidden, af Mordechai came, so did Mordechai. Vayidei zeh hey Rabbi Yisrael, and when Mordechai did this, guess what happened? By Yidden, there was an illumination. Sheidim shishmasim begoli. Their neshama stood revealed. That's what Mordechai accomplished, Yoini, by every Yid. He illuminated them, and it came through Mordechai, who was called Ish Yehudi, just like Moshe did in the time of Moshe. And it's with this koyach of the neshama that b'mesiras nefesh, that Eden stood with mesiras nefesh, became a Torah mitzvah poel, in actually learning Torah and doing mitzvahs in actuality. You see here, the previous Rebbe connects it to the pasuk v'atat etzaveh, and this is where the Rebbe began his maamar of 1981, which later was printed in Sefer Maamar Malukah, volume 6, which became the last maamar that the Rebbe distributed before his stroke. And it's kind of our Basi Legani, it's like the Rebbe's last maamar. So you see here, I want you to see this. That's why I'm teaching you this maamar. The Frierdiker Rebbe begins the maamar with Kibel Yehudim, but right here on page 192, he goes into V'ata Tetzaveh. Moshe, are you clear what I just said, or did I lose you? Hello? Talk.
You have to unmute. Unmute.
I'm unmuted.
You got it? You follow?
Yeah,
Good.
thanks.
You shall command the Yidden, they should take olive oil pure to illuminate the constant ner tomet light. Here also it needs clarification. How is this? Pesach, how is it different? What's different? This command from all the other commands should never behem tzavas b'nei Yisrael. V'kanu omer v'atat tzavah. Yoni. Most tzivuyim in the Torah it says tzavas b'nei Yisrael. Command the children of Israel. Here it doesn't say that. It says v'atat tzavas b'nei Yisrael. So the language is very different, and that's what the Friedrich Rebbe is asking. Why? V'yoid. Another question. Question number 2, Avi, if you're jotting it down. V'yoid. Ma'u v'yichoi lecha shem azayis. They should bring to you olive oil. The halei halos haneiris soydei Aaron. Who is the one that lit the candles? Aaron, the Kohen Gadol. So who should you bring the oil to? To the one who's lighting it, to Aaron. Doesn't say that. Hashem says, the Jews should bring to you, Moshe, the olive oil. Why? Bring it to Aaron when he's not good enough. He's the Kohen Gadol and he's lighting the menorah. If Moshe's job was to light the menorah, I can understand why you bring to him the oil. But since Moshe's job was not to light the menorah, at least at this point in the maamar, the question is, why is the Torah Hashem instruct us to bring the oil to Moshe? That's the question. Question number 3. What does it mean crushed? Crushed for light, for the illuminary. We know oil that we use for lighting, burning, hurak shem zayis. It's shem zayis zoch, pure olive oil. So therefore, this question, look, what's this idea of crushing? What's the additional nekuda of crushed olives? Shem zayis zoch. That's his 3rd question. Number 4, question 4. What does it mean, lamoir? Bring oil for the illuminary. Look further. The Havalele Meimar, it should have said, lehoyer. Bring oil to illuminate, to burn. Not to the illuminator, lamoor. Question number 5. Enough questions? What's this idea of a ner tomid? The Bahaloah is hanedas the Aaron. When Aaron lit the menorah, ksiv erev at boker, from evening till morning. It was on all night. Uvenedas the Moshe, but when it comes to the candle, the lights of Moshe, right here in Parshat the beginning of V'ata Tetzaveh, nemar ner tomid. So what's this ner tomid? Aaron lit the menorah, it stayed lit from the evening, me'erev ad boker. What's this ner tamid business? That's question 5. Asher kol hinyonim elu, says the Friedrich Rebbe, all of these 5 ideas that we just asked about, or all of these ideas, had a yeshram ba'avodah b'nefesh adam. This is a yesoid in Chassidus Chabad. They all, in Chassidus in general, in the Baal Shem Tov, Chassidus, that they all apply to man. These aren't just details in the Torah that you have to learn to make with your big finger and find out the Ramban and the Rambam and the Rashi and argue back and forth and make chidushim and all that. No, it's relevant la'avodas Hashem. So the Rebbe wants to know, what is it la'avodas Hashem? What is ner tamid? What does it mean, a constant fire in your service of God? What does it mean to illuminate, to bring the oil to Moshe, not to Aaron, in avodas Hashem? That's his point. The tachlis or anova kavona whom, and what is the Torah saying? That the ultimate purpose is lahalis ner tomit. That there should be a constant fire and lahalos to elevate the situation, that there's a constant ner tomit. Dichsiv ner Hashem nishmas adam. So he brings the verse, the candle of God is the soul of man. Asher kolin yoni oilam, all aspects of the world. Asher adam oisik behem, that man is involved in. Hey mi'irim, they should shine. Right? So again, Ner Hashem, the candle of Hashem, is nishmas adam, is man's soul. And what are we saying? What are we saying about this ner? Lahalos ner tamid. It should be continuous, meaning that the aspect of illumination should be continuous by the person who's serving God. So he hasn't gone into details, but he's now laid out his plan for developing the idea. Kitzer, Yevayet, we explained the B'shas HaTzera. At the time of the decree of Haman, this Gala B'Yisrael Eir Anashamam, it was revealed by Yidden the soul of the light of their soul. Lamid B'Nisyenes, to withstand tests. L'kayim HaTeiro Mitzvah B'Nimsilis Nefesh, and to fulfill Teiro Mitzvahs with self-sacrifice. Who al Yidei Mordechai, the Shokol K'Moshe, and this is through Mordechai, who is equivalent to Moshe, the Chsiv Bey. And it says by Moshe, V'ata Tatzav is Bnei Yisrael, that Nitan Lo Koyach, Moshe Rabbeinu is given the Koyach, the ability and power, L'kasher is Bnei Yisrael, to bind Yidden, Le'elokus, to godliness, to divinity, L'yos, so that the end result is that they're constantly in a state of Ner Tomed, constantly in a state of burning, of illuminating. Next page, 992. So one of the questions was, what's the change in the language, right? Let's see what he says. He says, let's look at another word. This wasn't one of the 5 questions. So in the beginning of Ois Dalet on page 193, the Rebbe analyzes another point of the pasuk. V'zeu v'ato tetzava. You, Moshe, you shall command. Tetzivu yutzavsa v'chibur. And what should you do to tzava? What is the word tzava associated with? Tzavsa v'chibur, connection. Tzavta v'chibur. Right? In other words, vis-a-vis, the mitzvah connects you to the commander. Shehu inyan hiskashrus. This is the concept of what we call hiskashrut, connection, binding, bound. The ispashtusa de Moshe b'chol dora. He brings the statement for Tikkun de Zoyar, note 6. You see, it gives you the reference Tikkun Zoyar Tikkun Memtes. That what? The extension is pashtusa, from the word hispashet, pishut. Is pashtusa, that's Aramaic with the aleph at the end. The extension, the Moshe, bechol dora, is in every generation. And therefore, you shall command the Jewish, the Yidden, the kasher ata to kasher's Bnei Yisrael. When you, Moshe, will be the one to bind them, to connect them to Hashem, that's when they'll bring you the oil. You're not getting a freebie, Moshe. You want the oil? You got to do something for the Jews. You got to do v'ato tetzaveh. You have to connect them. Oh, what a pshat. Moshe is the one that has to connect Yidden to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And as a result of that, the Yidden bring Moshe the oil. Wonderful, wonderful insight. Let's see how he develops it. The Nishmas Yisrael, Yiddish souls, al yedei avodos and b'teiro mitzvahs, through their activity in Torah mitzvahs, yosifu gilui oir. They will add revelation of light b'madregas Moshe, to the level of Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu, when you will engage in this, and what does it mean? They'll bring you oil. They're going to make you greater. the symbolism of bringing the oil to Moshe, Yonasan, means that we add something to Moshe that Moshe didn't have. But it only comes if Moshe does what he's supposed to do, v'ata tetzaveh. So who does it begin with? Moshe. V'oz yiner tomid, and when it's done in such a way, if the process is such as the Rebbe explains here, based on the psukim, then the result will be ner tomid, there'll be a constant light. So we need to understand this. How will this take place? Moshe is called the loyal shepherd. Shehu roya nemon, he's the loyal shepherd, roya nemon. Why do we call Moshe the loyal shepherd? Because he nourishes and feeds emunah to Yidden. That's why it's called royal, not because of what he does, not because of what he does for himself, it's because of what he does for us. And what does he do for us, Avi? He instills in us emunah. Moshe Rabbeinu makes it possible by a Yid to really believe in God. What a thought. Shehiroyu mafanes es Yisrael, Moshe Rabbeinu pastures, he sustains, he gives parnasa, spiritual parnasa, to Yidden be'inyano emunah. Right? What's parnasa? Something you didn't have and you get, that's your parnasa, you earn it. Moshe Rabbeinu gives the Yidden something they didn't have on their own. It's called emunah. Now, when I say they didn't have it on their own, every Yid has emunah. But what I mean to say is, what the Rebbe means to say is that the emunah should be shmuel bigoli. You should live with your emunah. Your emunah should drive you. That you need Moshe Rabbeinu. Of course, we say Yidden are mamina b'nei mamidim. We're all believers. Why do we need Moshe Rabbeinu? Of course we're all believers, children of believers. But it's dormant. Moshe Rabbeinu is the one who sustains it and activates it and illuminates it by Yidden so that it becomes very palpable and real in a Yid's life. That's Moshe's credit. The fact that we all Yidden believe with complete faith by Hashem in God, with self-sacrifice, Moshe is the one that pastures it and feeds it to Yidden. And he explains, you hear those words? Look at those 4 words. Moshe gives us chizuk, mechazek osanu. He gives us chizuk, be'emunaseinu, with our faith in God. Again, we have the faith in us. That's not, Moshe didn't create the faith. God created the faith in us. But Moshe is mechazek the emunah. Moshe is called a shepherd. The hainu. Take, for example, a shepherd who feeds his sheep. He doesn't create anything new. Why? What does he do, a shepherd? He leads his sheep to a place of good grazing. Did he create the grass? No. Did he create the good agriculture that's good to eat from there? No. What does the shepherd do? The shepherd, and you see this in Eretz Yisrael, leads them with sheep on those mountains and sheep. He's the one that brings the sheep to the place which is good for them to eat. Bazara yekabitz tloyim olish yinahel. Bizroa yekabitz tloyim. The seeds gather the tal, the dew, olish yinahel, and I believe they're led upwards, meaning the leading of the sheep is to a place where there's tal and it's good for them. Es haktanim yinahel banochas b'hanhoga benachas. The young ones are led b'hanhoga benachas in a very calm, peaceful way. Ubaycha lehem l'chol echad v'echad. In other words, the shepherd, he chooses for every sheep a food that's good for that particular sheep or group of sheep, what that sheep or group of sheep needs. So it's all the decision of the shepherd where and when the sheep should go to eat, to graze. Ukadisa b'medrash Rabbah says a medrash, the ktanim will come out to pasture so that they get good soft grass. And afterwards come out, I guess, the older sheep. Oh, God, I understand. The Medrash is saying, Shmuel, there's like groups. First come out the ktanim, the young shepsalach. And those young shepsalach need a lot more because they're young and not well fed. So he takes them to a good place for them. Afterwards come out this Canaan, the big bulyakis, the bulvans, the big fat sheep. Oh, he says Beinanis, the middle ones. Then come out the ones that are full and adult and already all, well made, and they eat Esav HaKosher, the hard grass, the grumpy grass. You don't think you already ate it. You've been eating all your life. You don't need to stuff yourself now.
A good shepherd knows exactly which one.
That's right. That's right. That's the Nekuda. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The one who knows, like Shmuel said, the one who knows what particular place is the place for that particular sheep. He is the one that should come and become the Jewish shepherd for my nation. This is what's written. That they brought out the sheep to pasture in my nation Yaakov. So he goes back. So this was all like a medrash. Now he goes back to his point. That's why Moshe is called in the Tikkun Hazayah, is called Raya Mehemna, the loyal shepherd. Shu Raya Nemen, because he's a loyal shepherd. Shemachazek es emunosei b'Hashem, es emunoseinu. He sustains our faith in God, and he knows what person needs what emunah and what kind of emunah and in what situation. And that's why he is the Raya Neman. There's a pasuk, it says, feed emunah, feed faith. You hear this? We have to feed and give parnasa to emunah. Now this is an enigmatic statement. What do you mean? If I have emunah, Avi, and emunah is complete by a Jew in their soul, what do you mean you have to feed it? What is it lacking? And that's what the Rebbe is saying here. And Chassidus says this, that unless you develop your emunah can remain intact but asleep for many years and gurnished. Ure'ei emunah. You have to feed emunah. Yes, Avi, what?
Also, emunah is not static like an Evan. It requires nourishment. Like you ate breakfast this morning, you're going to have to eat breakfast tomorrow. And you had to eat breakfast yesterday. If you don't nourish it, it'll be machlish.
That's right. So he says, so Moshe Rabbeinu does that. Shetzrichim leaders in front of Emunah could isa b'zoyach chelik gimel dafresh chofei on base. Let's see what the Zohar says. Quote: Hahu Emunah deleila, this supernal faith. Yitzim v'yisparnes, for the word zon, uparnes has to be fed. Minei al yotcha, you have to feed it. The emunah tzricha chizuk. Emunah needs chizuk. V'zeu yitzon v'yisparnes, and this is the words of the Zohar. Yitzon, from the word zon, v'yisparnes and parnosa. The mezoinos bichlal parnosa. Bichlal mezoinos, sustenance, is included in parnosa. Uparnosa, so amuna v'chizuka. And how do we give parnosa up to faith and strengthen it v'chizuka hu al yedei Moshe? It's through Moshe Rabbeinu. And now he says this pashtusa de Moshe b'chol dora. There's an extension of Moshe Rabbeinu in every generation. Veheim. Oh, really? And who are these guys? Says the Rebbe. Roshei Alfi Yisrael. Chapter 2 in Tanya says this. These are the leaders of Alfi Yisrael. Eineh Eda, the eyes of the congregation. Shehein Heimerei Yisrael. They are the Jewish shepherds. And what do? Lechazikus Amunah, to strengthen their Munah Bahafaya in Hashem, B'Mesilas Nefesh, by us having Mesilas Nefesh B'Poyel in actuality, B'Kiyam HaTorah Mitzvahs. To understand this further, the Hine Yisrael Nikroyim Mamina B'nei Mamina. Oh, I mentioned this earlier. We are called believers, the children of believers. Dichsiv Vayamin Moshe. Right? And so you see the word Vayamin Ha'am, I'm sorry. That the word Emunah is associated with Ha'am, with the nation. Uksiv, Vayaminu Bashem, and they believed in God. Uvnei Maminim. So 1 second. So we ourselves are Maminim. But it says that we are Maminim, B'nei Maminim. So now he explains the B'nei Maminim, children of believers. Ubnei Maminim, Sheheim, B'nei Avraham, Shenikra Emunah. We are children of Avraham, who's called faith, Emunah, Dichsiv, Vehem and B'Hashem. By Avraham, he believed in Hashem. Dichsiv, Iti, Milvonon, Tavoi, Teshuri, Merosh Amona. Yeah. Iti, with me, Milvonon from Lebanon, Tavoi, Teshura. You come with, I think it means like a gift, which is the gift, Merosh Amona. This pasuk from the head of Emunah. This is a pasuk, I think, referring to Moshe Rabbeinu, to Avram. Sorry, Zeu Avram. Yeah, Zeu Avram. This is Avram. Shuhu reish la maminim. Right. Look what it says in the pasuk. Yoni Teshuri mirosh emona. So he says that's a reference to Moshe Rabbeinu, who was the head of the believers.
Avraham Avinu.
What?
Avraham Avinu.
Avraham Avinu, right, I'm sorry, Avraham Avinu. The Avraham Avinu Vasholim, Hoya Rishon, he was the first, Sheposach Tziner, Ho'emunah b'Mesilas Nefesh. Who is the first one who opened the gateway, the tziner, the pipelines, for Emunah with Mesilas Nefesh? Avraham Avinu. So he inherited to us, Lebanav Acharav, the faith, to his children after him, to the generations. This is the set emunah in our hearts. Every Yid has emunah. We have it as an inheritance from the leader of emunah, which is Avraham Avinu. Kol ish Yisrael emunah pshutah b'Hashem, who has a simple faith to Hashem. The il memala kol almim. And what does this faith consist of? That Hashem pervades all worlds, everywhere. And he surrounds all worlds in the sense that his miraculous revelations are there too, in the way of what's called Seiv Kol Almin, encompassing all worlds. And number 3, and there is no place on earth where it's empty of him. So the Rebbe says, Maminim, we are faithful. B'nei Maminim, because we are children of Avram, who inherited to us faith. However, like Avi said before, and like the maamar is saying, the emunah needs ure'ei emunah. And you should know this is a very big nekud in the Alter Rebbe in his maamarim in Likutei Torah. Though these talks, Shmuel I'm sure knows, talks a lot about this nekuda. Why? Because it's very easy to say I have faith. And we have faith. And the Alter Rebbe says already in chapter 18 of Tanya that when you're faced with do or die or bow down to the cross, the Jew is going to have Mesilas Nefesh. Even a Kal Shebekalim. Even though someone's very, very lenient in Torah mitzvahs. So if that's the case, what do I need a munah for? The Rebbe says here, the Frierdiker Rebbe says, you have, based on his predecessor's teachings, that you have to ignite this faith. Avi used the words, it becomes chalush. Yes, Yoni.
So, Rebbe, question, if we're talking here about, let's say, two kinds of faith, right?
Yeah.
So I remember learning about this in Likutei Maran, the difference between Amuna Pshuta and then other kinds of Amuna, like more deeper Amuna. So you think that this maybe the Rebbe is kind of like talking in those terms, or it's, I know it's a Chabad, more of a Chabad thought, but I'm saying in the same kind of ball game.
I could say it's in the same ball game, but when Reb Nachman, it's interesting. I'm right now very involved in Breslov and Likutei Moran. I'm writing all about it, so this is very much on my mind. It's hard to know. I mean, I believe it's clear that Reb Nachman learned Tanya. The Alter Rebbe was 27 years older than Reb Nachman. People don't realize that. 27. He was like his father. I mean, right? 27 years. So it's clear for Reb Nossim's writings and others, Reb Nachman of Cherin, the successor, that they learned Tanya, Now, you go back to Zohar. The Frierdiker Rebbe is quoting the Zohar. So, in other words, it's not a Chiddush of the Tanya too. The Chiddush of the Tanya is, let's say, chapter 18, Perek Yud Ches, where he talks about having the emunah self-sacrifice, even by Kal Shebekalim. Now again, there you could find sources earlier, but the way the Alter Rebbe puts it together is a chiddush, is brilliant, right? So I can't say, frankly, I'm not an expert in Likutei Moran. I wish I would be, but I'm not. To be able to tell you that what Reb Nachman means, emunah pshuta, I know what you're talking about, and a higher level of emunah is what the Frierdiker Rebbe is saying here. I'm not ready to say that, but what I could say is that the idea sounds similar. Because here Yoni, he's talking about the ultimate emunah that every Jew has, which according to, in Reb Nachman's writing, what would that be? What would that be in Reb Nachman's writing? The emunah pshuta, the higher one?
No, emunah pshuta.
Emunah pshuta. And the Frierdiker Rebbe is saying, based on what the Alter Rebbe writes, etc., that you have to feed that emunah. So he's not really talking about a second level of emunah. He's talking about the level of emunah. Emunah pshuta. He says clearly here, the emunah pshuta. And that emunah pshuta, if not ure'ei emunah, will fade away. Fade away meaning it will stay dormant. So, this is something
That's a new nukuda, because he doesn't say that. I love this, because this is, I think Rabbi Nachman, he refers to this, but he doesn't say it like this. This is very cool, because the dormant thing that he's mentioning, I think he refers to it, but he doesn't go into it. He doesn't go into it.
Okay. when you learn Chassidus, this is, and you start comparing one to the other, it's a slippery slope. I'm saying you have to really be a master. Like I'm trying. There's that I know, like one master who knows both Chabad and Breslov cold. And I'm trying to suck out information from him, because even my teachers in Chassidus, I don't think they never really learned Likutei Moran. I'm sure Rabbi Yoel Kahn, if he gave him a Likutei Moran, he would know the best in the world, not even a question. But he didn't. That wasn't the derech that he was learning all his life. So when you start making comparisons, you have to be very, very careful to say this is this and this is that. So that's why I'm ambivalent. But overall, it sounds like it's correct. Yes, Yonis.
I think maybe the example for this is a little guy who inherited $1 million from his father, and now he's a rich guy, but he doesn't know how to take the money out of the bank. Comes along and up to a guy assigned to the money, who gives him money every month, and that's the way he lives.
Right. Tomorrow we'll learn the kitzur, but I just want to say, should have said it earlier, that Sunday, there were four Yidden, Gedolim, whatever, that passed away, and one of them was Rabbi Twersky, and Rabbi Shulam David Soloveitchik, the Brisker Rosh Hashiva, and then there was a Rabbi Brizel, who was probably from the Stolner Hasidim leaders, and then there was, of course, Rabbi Shiner, who was an American boy who became a big Talmud Chacham, and he was the Rosh Yeshiva of the Kamenetz Yeshiva. So I'm sure that there are students and already grandchildren in Bet Shemesh that, so Mitzvah Shem, I hope to make a tribute to a few of those people later in a few days. But I do want to say that Rabbi Twersky I knew him personally. I interviewed him extensively. It's now online, the interview, if you want to see it. And he was a very special Yid, and he left us. I remember Shmuel, when we started Kollel in the shul, there was Rabbi Twersky's books. I don't know if that's because his son-in-law was the Rabbi Myers, the rabbi, his step-son-in-law. But I remember other, people looking at the Sforim, and I could tell you myself, when I was in California and I gave shiurim, especially in Los Angeles on Pico, I started giving shiurim there. I used his books, especially his books Generation to Generation, as a one-of-a-kind, with Msholim and anecdotes and psychology. And this was something that spoke to the people. And I saw it because of the amount of people who were coming to these lectures. And I took a lot from there. So I'm personally indebted to what he left, Klal Yisrael, and many more things, which I hope to talk about later in the week. So I just want to say it's a shiva of such a Yid, and should have a lichtig Gan Eden, and there's no question that Klal Yisrael will continue benefiting from everything that he's done for us for all his life. I just wanted to say that. Everyone, listen.